Wow, we are back with another live, and I didn't think we'd be doing one to talk about author Tori Woods, but we are. Tori Woods has been arrested and is now out on bail. In this video, we're going to get through all the details surrounding her arrest, when she was arrested, what her charges were, her bail conditions, when is her next court case, and all the things. But I also think it's important for us to talk about how that applies to us here in the United States. Tori Woods is an Australian author, and I know folks often cite First Amendment rights, but there are obscenity laws. So we're going to get into that. So we're going to get into the US law equivalent. We're going to get into past cases that have been prosecuted, the specific law that we are predicting will be used to prosecute romance fiction going forward. But again, we're just here to talk about Tori Woods being arrested and everything surrounding that. Before we get into it, trigger warnings and disclaimers, okay? Anytime you see Tori Woods in a video, just be prepared that it will involve content as it relates to PDO. I'm not going to say the word, but you can infer from what I'm saying. There's also going to be CSAM content involved as well. There is going to be R-ing, a possible conversation surrounding that, and just anything where there are adults possibly harming minors. So again, take care of yourself. Stop watching this video. But yes, take care of your mental health. Those are the trigger warnings. I'll also include a list of trigger warnings in the video's description, but essentially stop watching this if you know you will be affected. And again, take care of yourself and your mental health. Now, if you're just joining us live, again, Tori Woods has been arrested. We will get into the details as it relates to that. Now, Tori Woods published a book, DLT. I'm not saying the name of the entire book. And it is now being reported through Australia media that she has been arrested. You can find this on, what is the news source? The Daily Telegraph. There's also news.com.au. So this is over the Australian press. As you can see the headlines here, that she has been arrested. Sydney author Lauren Tessolin Mastrosa, that is her legal name. Tori Woods is a pen name, has been arrested. That's the Daily Telegraph headline. And this is the news.com.au headline. Again, I'm including links in the video's description so that you can read more on your own time about the arrest. But I will be reading the arrest statement. Police have arrested a Sydney author on child abuse material charges following global outrage over her book entitled DLT. Christian charity marketing executive Lauren Tessolin Mastrosa, who writes erotic fiction under the pen name Tori Woods, caused an online furor following the release of her latest novel, which outlines the relationship between an 18-year-old and her father's friend. Readers said that in the book, whose cover features children's building blocks, the man speaks about how he desired the teen since she was 3 years old. Police arrested Ms. Tessolin Mastrosa on Friday after receiving reports about the book. About 12:30 p.m. on Friday, detectives attended a home on Penn Street, Quakers Hill, and arrested a 33-year-old woman before being taken to Riverstone Police Station, NSW police wrote in a statement. At the home, police executed a search warrant, seizing several hard copies of the novel to be forensically examined. Ms. Tessolin Mastrosa was charged with possessing child abuse material, disseminating child abuse material, and producing child abuse material. She was granted conditional bail to appear before Blacktown Local Court on Monday, 31st of March, 2025. Before her arrest, Ms. Tessolin Mastrosa took to social media, explaining the backlash as a big misunderstanding. On screen is just screenshots of her apology. The reporter then said, DLT is definitely, no, sorry. The reporter is quoting Tori Woods by saying DLT is definitively not promoting or inciting anything ever to do with CSA or PDO. What is being said is grossly disturbing and breaks my heart as well as makes me sick. Those are the author's statement. The report then goes on to say Miss Tessolin Mastrosa has since pulled down her social media accounts. The book has also been removed from Amazon and Goodreads. The designer of the cover, Georgia Stove, has also put out a statement saying she has received death threats as a result of the book. I have cut ties with Tori Woods effective immediately, she said. She said she was also not aware of what was in the book when she designed the cover. All I had known about the book was the blurb, which read barely legal. And in my mind, I truly thought that was okay. I am here to answer any questions you might have. Just please stop with the threats over something I had no say in. Ms. Tessolin Mastrosa has been stood down from her role at Baptist Care. She was also formerly a journalist for News Corp publication Penrith Press. So that's the end of the news report as is seen on news.com.au. Sydney author Lauren Tessolin Mastrosa arrested over PDO book. It's again also reported through the Daily Telegraph that she has been arrested and other Australian news media. I forgot to mention at the top, because I really want to do this, the reason I am aware of this arrest. Let me pull up my thing. AJ, I received a comment on the previous video when we did our original reporting saying that the author has been arrested and charged by NSW police for producing, possession, and dissemination of CA material. She's currently has been released on bail, but will face court. She has also been stood down from her job at a Christian organization. So I just want to thank AJ for leaving a comment, because that's essentially what I woke up to this morning. So again, just in case you're joining us, author Tori Woods has been arrested. I know this has been a lot. This has been a lot. We also chose not to report on the fact when we saw her information being distributed on social media, stating her place of employment, stating her full legal name, sharing her address, sharing phone numbers, and all these things. We chose not to do that because that's doxing an individual, so we did not report on that. However, it has now escalated to the point where she has been arrested. I mean, Francesca, what was your first thoughts when I bombarded you with this information this morning?
I know. I'm like, I just woke up. What happened? I think it's crazy. I don't know that I feel so good with seeing someone get arrested over this. So I think it opens up a whole slew of just a huge gray area, especially for the romance genre. So I think more than any other genre, I know that all genres are being right now under like scrutiny and under attack, but especially romance, because I want to say 95% of romance has sex in it. So, I mean, I know that there's the clean romance, and I don't think that's a huge percentage of the genre. Even the ones that are a little more tame or whatever, they all have sex. So to open up this can of worms about prosecuting somebody for a book, I think it's just a whole thing that we don't really, it's a whole path we don't want to go down. So I don't feel good about seeing it taken this far. I also, like you said before, I really don't agree with doxing, which is why I would never participate in putting out somebody's personal information on the internet. There's many people where like we can feel all self-righteous about, oh, we're doing it to the right quote unquote person because they're doing something wrong. But there's so many people that have had horrible things happen to them because somebody put out their information online, whether it's, front facing people like us or just regular people where, their information gets put out and something happens. So like that whole thing also, I feel very strongly about that we shouldn't be participating in that as a society. But yeah, this whole thing about getting arrested for this type of topic, it's going to be up to whoever decides that this is now considered child porn, basically.
Yep. Laura, what were your thoughts again? Because for the first time, I'm the one who bombarded you all with the information. And I want to again
Yeah.
thank AJ for leaving a comment with an update, bringing my attention to this.
I think it hits too close to home because we're facing a lot of book bans, a lot of movement, but there's also a law that a bill in place for romance to be considered obscene material in Oklahoma, and not only possessing romance but also distributing for the authors and you as a reader will be affected. And this hits too close. I know it's different countries, different laws, different ways to do things, but this could be a precedent. Like, see, like those people who are sponsors, see, this is the material they're reading. And it's like, we know that it's not, and we know that it's not just romance, it's also literary fiction, it's also horror, it's also, there's different ways depiction, you know, when we think about mystery and thrillers and horror where we see gore and murder, you know, it's, why are we having, you know, so I think it's just interesting. Like, we can have intent to think about it, but at the same time it's not, it's just too blurry, too close, and it's just, again, it's going to that place of this is just fuel to the fire here in America.
Absolutely. Again, if you are watching us live, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Replay crew, we haven't forgotten about you as well. Please share your thoughts in the comments. But also, if you are just joining us live, author Tori Woods was arrested, is now out on bail pending a court date. She will be going to court, I think the news reporting said March 31st. She'll be appearing in her local court, Blacktown Local Court, on Monday, 31st of March 2025. Again, she was arrested on a series of charges. And they've also seized copies of the book from her home, and she's now facing 3 charges. Now, when we originally did our video or reporting, because at this point we are like Winfrey, Cronkite, tell me all those famous journalists out there. I'm laughing, but this is not funny. But when we first shared about this, I also was paying attention to the comments, which, by the way, thank you, everyone, replay crew, for sharing your comments. We love hearing your thoughts and how you're adding to the conversation. Now, there were different buckets worth of conversation that was being had, but there was one in particular that caught my attention, which was everything surrounding, well, this isn't the worst that has been out there. You know, we have books by different authors. You know, let me use a classic everyone refers to, Lolita, of course. It always comes back to that. But there are other books in other genres that approach this kind of material, but people are saying, why is this book receiving this much backlash to the point where now this author is being arrested? Francesca, I know you have some thoughts on some previous books on this. So I would definitely want us to get into that. But before we do, we have a comment. Liz Lucas is saying, my question is, what are the laws in her country? I know text-based content isn't considered illegal in the US. Well, we're going to have a conversation on that because there is information on the Department of Justice's website here in the US that speaks to that differently. I also have links in the video's description as is right now. So you can click that and refer to that. We will be discussing that here. There has also been cases in the United States where there has been prosecution of material, fiction, that falls under this line. Now, granted, the US hasn't had court cases with long-form fiction content, but short-form content certainly has been under attack in recent times. I would also like to refer you to the article where they listed the charges that she has been arrested under. There are 3 charges: possessing CAM, disseminating CAM, and producing CAM. She will be going to court on Monday, at which point I'm sure we will hear more once the reporters that are local that know the laws in their area are reporting on it. I am not familiar with Australian law, and more specifically, the law in her province. She is in New South Wales because she is a Sydney-based author. So I don't know what the laws are in that state as well, because Australia also has states like we do in the US. And yes, Liz, we will be discussing the US Justice Department. Liz says, yes, please, I look for more information for my own knowledge and awareness. Listen, like Francesca said, if you're just joining us, this is not a good sign, her being arrested for the genre. And then because I went down a rabbit hole to educate myself on US case law so that we could present it. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I read, okay? And the US Department of Justice actually has a citizen's guide to helping us discern this material. But again, like everything, it's purely objective. But Francesca, as it relates to other books in the genre, because you brought to my attention like the Bryn Greenwood book that people have been using heavily, I've seen on threads as a comparison. Well, if we are coming after DLT by Tori Woods, why didn't we come after Bryn Greenwood's book? Share your thoughts. I know you reviewed this on the differences in the genre.
Yeah, actually, I had gotten an advanced reader copy when the Bryn Greenwood book came out. I read it, I reviewed it, I gave it 4 stars. The key difference here of why something like that, or something like a Lolita, or I mean, there's also Belinda by Anne Rice that, she wrote as Anne Rampling. But the key difference is the intent of the genre. So when you're talking Bryn Greenwood, this is a literary fiction novel. And same with when you discuss horror or anything like that. The intent of the genre of romance, which is what Tori Woods is writing in, is completely different. It is always about romanticizing a relationship. And I think that is the only difference here is the intent of how she's portraying this relationship. Had she written a literary fiction with that same relationship, people now can understand and discern. And also there's going to be a difference in how you're writing it, because genres do have different ways of portraying things. And so as it relates to, for example, Bryn Greenwood, that everybody loves to harpen, it is a story about a very twisted relationship, but you come out of that, and as you're going through, you understand that it's a twisted relationship. It is just two really messed up people, one much younger than the other, that just had to basically claw their way out and survive. And you're just going through that experience of that relationship. And yes, there is a happy ending, let's call it, for them, but it's in the same way that you would say there's a happy ending in a women's fiction novel. There is a resolution, let's say, to two characters kind of like living their life in the best way they can at the end. And when it's a romance, you're actually saying, like, this is aspirational. This is what, you would want. And yes, I understand that there's also a section of romance that there's dark romance, and there's things that, we're reading about stalkers and serial killers and, like, Stockholm syndrome. So there's also the intent of, the reader putting their discerning mind to it. But there are certain things where it's like it's crossing certain lines. And I think the point with this book was the fact that it's crossing that line in a romance, in an erotic romance way. Whereas, Bryn Greenwood presented just a really messed up relationship in a literary fiction environment. And you come out of that knowing that it's a messed up relationship. So I think that's, to me, the way that it's written is the biggest thing.
I also just want to interject and say the Bryn Greenwood character went through a lot of trauma. And we know, again, from real life experiences with individuals who've experienced severe trauma, also not just from reading, but maybe your real life, that these people aren't always necessarily going to have like a clean life moving forward, meaning they are vulnerable. That's the word I'm looking for. They will be vulnerable to more bad things happening to them. And then sometimes what they find as their saving grace, this is happy for them. I mean, for people who have no experience with trauma, they'll be like, are you kidding me? Like, this is completely messed up. But this is happy. This is positive for this character, considering what they've gone through. However, with the Tori Woods situation, we don't have that. There is no what is the word I'm looking for? There is no context, because I am always team context matters, and this is a romance. So with that in mind, of course, the expectation is different. Laura, I also know, as an avid romance reader, you also have opinions on how this is playing out, both with people comparing DLT to other books that are in other genres and saying it's the same thing, but then also with the lens now that the author has been arrested, though I should say the author is out on bail.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because this is a short romance. So we're going to think about it. There's also a section within the romance space where there's erotic short romances that don't have a lot of development. It's just mainly like smutty scenes, like spicy scenes going on. And so it's interesting to see because we don't have the development. We just have the intention where it's just supposed to elevate. And this is not the first or the last short erotic romance that has been banned from Amazon. There have been plenty of them. There are authors who no longer write can publish on Amazon for various reasons, because they toe the line of really gray, really areas, and it's just not acceptable morality clause. So it's just interesting that we see this, and then we caught up with it. It's one of many that may be around, and it's set as an example of what's now acceptable was not acceptable. And the Lord's years to 2025, where a lot of morality clauses are coming in, a lot of people have very strong opinions of what romance is, because romance is now in the open as a popular genre. It used to be something that we read in hiding, and now people are actually admitting that they're reading romance, and romance has things that may not be acceptable in today's patriarchy. And so creating laws, creating exposure is just opening up the door and saying, like, you know what, we're going to arrest you. We think this is material. And again, it's a really fine line. They're coming for our books. What else is there going to come next?
Yep, absolutely. And we're going to get into the US laws that we are a bit nervous about, that this might impact now future books. Because here's the thing, they always just need one recent relevant example, and then they're going to jump on it. Before I get to Liz's comment, because Liz has a comment that I do want to bring to our attention, I just want to reset real quick. Hi, everyone. If you are joining us, you might be wondering, why are we live this early on a Monday morning? Depending where you are in the world, we are US based, so it is Monday morning. And you might be wondering, gosh, what is going on? Well, author Tori Woods, that we reported on last week, has been arrested. So Tori is arrested but is now out on bail. I want to make that very clear. That's very important. We got reporting. Well, first of all, I got a comment on a video I had posted before. So I want to shout out AJ. Thank you for leaving the comment with the update. But as you can see, Daily Telegraph, Australian version, has comments done their reporting. News.com.au has also done their reporting. And then it really gets into the nitty gritty. I'll just read this brief summary that was on the Daily Telegraph, which is essentially that charity marketing exec charged amid taboo book probe. A Christian, why is this not coming up for me? Sorry. Okay, charity marketing exec charged amid taboo book probe. A Christian charity marketing executive who moonlights as an erotica author has been stood down from her role after police received multiple complaints for her latest book containing graphic fictional CAM material. Okay, it is noteworthy to say the article does go on to say she's out on bail and she will be appearing before her local court on Monday, the 31st. Now, Liz has a comment which I want us to get to. Liz is saying that would explain the reason why Tampa by Alyssa Notting wasn't as widely panned in the book community. It was intended to disturb and upset and horrify. I guess intention is everything.
It is.
Absolutely. Again, that sums it up perfectly, Liz. Absolutely. Intention matters. It's also part of the reason why, again, people keep referencing Lolita, but that, that won't be removed or banned. The Bryn Greenwood book will not face the same scrutiny because, again, this isn't romanticizing or saying this is happy or this is, normal, for lack of a better word. I hate using that word, but it's not okay. This isn't something to be seen as aspirational or fun or escapist. This is trauma. This is essentially trauma. And while we might not agree, and this is what I find as a person who reads a lot of literary fiction, you might not agree with the decisions the characters are making or what they feel as is okay. It is created to really push your thinking to say, hey, there are different realities that exist. This is this person's claw for happiness amid just something that is incredibly dark. So yeah, two completely different things. Now, I want us to get into some case law. Now, we are not lawyers. We are also not reporters or anything like that. However, as someone who, look, I've only been living in America I'm coming up on 8 years, y'all. Or is it 9? This year's going to be 9 later in the year. So it's been a minute. But the one thing I always hear Americans talking about is freedom, 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 freedom. Okay? Freedom is, I swear, it's like in the DNA. I often say to my husband, who is American, clearly y'all got like this freedom indoctrination in school, but I'm here for it. Okay? I want to live in a country that is free. I do. So I'm not going to knock it. However, freedom is not free, for lack of, a better explanation. It really isn't. And the First Amendment does have limits. So I want us to bring our attention to the Department of Justice. Okay. I don't think there's a better source out there than the DOJ itself. This is from their criminal division. Now, I'm not going to read everything, but this particular screen grab that is on screen has to do with obscenity. And it says, the Supreme Court has ruled that, and I quote, transmitting obscenity and child P, whether via the internet or other means, is illegal under federal law for both adults and juveniles. And this is Reno v. ACLU 521 US 844 1998. Now I'm going to read the last part. It's illegal under federal law for both adults and juveniles. Now, again, for adult consumption is one thing, but they're saying even for adult consumption, this is illegal. It also gets into further detail under the fact that it's not protected under First Amendment rights to free speech. There are violations. Now, I do have to mention the US court uses a 3-pronged test, commonly referred to as the Miller test, to determine if given material is obscene. And it goes on to say, obscenity is defined as anything that fits the criteria of the Miller test, which is the 3-pronged test, which may include, for example, visual depictions, spoken words, or written text. Again, it goes back to the fact people often say written text is protected. But no, under US law, under the government, as stated by the Supreme Court in their recent ruling, the recent one is 1998, but this goes back to the 70s. But what they're saying, it's not just video, it's not just spoken, also written text is also liable. Now, again, it has a whole thing. There's a link in the video's description. You can go read it as to the 3-pronged test that a certain piece of material, whether video, spoken, or text, needs to meet in order to, pass the Miller test and is considered as obscene and as a result would be banned and maybe the person would be prosecuted. I don't know. However, we also have The NCAC, the National Coalition Against Censorship. Again, there's a link in the video's description because I want us to get educated, okay? We're not just here to just talk about the issue and the author being arrested and everything. I think it's also a great opportunity for us to get educated. Now, on this, they mention the prosecution of a fiction web host that really was putting that law that I quoted above to the test. So this was a case that was seen as a test of whether text-only fiction can be considered legally obscene. It goes into detail about the person who has been indicted on 7 counts of obscenity-related crimes for hosting this fiction archive. The site contained 25,000 stories by more than 2,200 authors. Now, it mentions that there were previous failures as it relates to Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer in 1964, William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch in 1965. And they're saying since that time, there has been no further attempts to criminalize long-form fiction in the United States. However, they mention fiction is not categorically exempt from the law. And then it goes on to state a case law of 1973 of Kaplan v. California. And the Supreme Court affirmed that words alone can be legally obscene in the sense of being unprotected by the First Amendment. Again, I'm not going to go into further reading of what this is, but essentially we have seen the Supreme Court affirm in more than one case that, hey, it can be obscene. And again, it has to pass this. If it passes this 3 test, that is the whole situation. You can read more about this particular web host case because experts were arguing that there is artistic value to this, that there is scientific value to this as well. So yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But Fran, I know when we were talking about this, you were mentioning this might be the case that some bright-eyed, eager, bushy-tailed attorney or district attorney or however it's done, wherever it's at, will use this now to go after our books. I mean, how are you feeling now knowing that this is DOJ's procedures? This is what the Supreme Court has said. We have essentially been here before. They have a framework. And essentially, if this is not proven to be valuable artistic expression, cultural, thinking, critical, anything, stuff might get banned.
Yeah. And I think that the issue is that all of that, all the tests and all the proving that it has value, it's all subjective, right? It's somebody's opinion of what is that thing, like what is going to pass. So it's all going to be based on somebody's opinion. And like you said, it's just going to take one person that is a little bit, excited about this thing, and everything is up for then being banned, because look, it has sex, so we can't have that. So I think it's just a very, very slippery slope to go down when it comes to prosecuting things like that. I think that a private business like Amazon has every right to say, I don't want to sell this on my platform, because that's a private business making a decision. And again, this is work before for authors. Like Laura was saying, this is not the first time, it's not going to be the last time that an author that writes romance, especially the very, let's call it a little bit shorter type of straddling a line that is questionable, there is definitely a market for that. And I think I've said this before, that line where it comes to that niche of romance, it's very blurred. People have different opinions. Somebody may feel, oh, this is good enough because the book was set in a state where child marriage laws are XYZ. So there's a huge blurred line. And what this is going to do is, it opens up to prosecution. But I feel like what we should try to steer clear is going down that legal route. Let businesses make business decisions. Amazon doesn't want to sell it, that's fine. And what's happened in the past is when Amazon decides to ban something from the Amazon platform, the author then sells that book on their website. And the readers that want to engage with that content go to the author and they buy it. And that hasn't taken away the right for people to make that determination of what is the line for them. And I think that at the end of the day, that's important. I think what, it's in a way, like we don't want to have certain type of material readily available. If it's only sold on the author's website, for example, I don't consider that readily available. You're not going to find a child randomly scrolling through Amazon and buying or reading that material, because they would have to literally go out and seek it. So I think that that's fine. We should let people be people, do what works for them, because I know that in that specific sub niche, there are so many blurred lines. I mean, the PSA is one of them, but let me tell you, there's so many other ones. Like, I know that there are, I know probably most of the things we can't say on the live, but there's books where, it gets into like paranormal, but there's like dead people and like, there's all kinds of stuff. And I'm not here to judge what people want to read. So if they want to go and read that stuff, there's stalkers, there's Stockholm syndrome, there's people that have been kidnapped and tortured and then they fall in love with their kidnapper and torturer. It's like, just it's not for me to be the morality police. That's basically what I'm getting at. But the availability, I understand, and we can make it harder for people to get certain stuff that's questionable.
I have a question though, because because I know we often refer to children, and most laws are all about protecting children. However, this is also saying it's not appropriate for adults either. That's my reading and my understanding. So if it's not appropriate for adults,
that's the concerning part. And the concerning part is that we're seeing that the precedent is there, like the law is there. So then what is that speaking for in terms of like freedom of expression? Like, okay, so well, that doesn't really exist because the law to curb that is there. So it hasn't been used in the past, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow somebody couldn't just use it and use it as per their perspective.
Yeah, I think in just thinking about today's society, where we are in 2025, and thinking about the rise of Christian nationalism and the expectations of puritanical culture and the patriarchy being reigning supreme, I think it's like diminishing, because this is a lot of times it's women's voices and women's freedom of expression. And it's just add another layer of like, let's just tone it down a little bit further. I think using these precedent laws, like it may seem like it would never happen. Maybe 10 years ago, we would think about that. But now where laws are popping up, where people are feeling comfortable in their space of power, or supposed power, they're ready to tarnish the freedom of expression. That's why there's so many book bannings. Like it's not just like a little book here. It's like they're banning our books. They're going literally, there's people who just have nothing else to do but ban our books. And so what is the next step? Let's just sue them. Let's just sue you. Let's just actually create a law, like sponsor those representatives to create laws and to go after the police and go for this. This is the issue that we got to fight for. Reality is that there's actual real issues to fight for, but we're going to waste our time, our money, our expenses, our fight in something that, again, this is not the land of the free, the freedom of expression. No, we're not. We're in a very different space, especially the US.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, definitely, to be alive. I'm gonna go to some comments real quick. Madlinks, hi, how do you do? Says, I think this is the best advertising a book has ever had. LOL. I don't know anything about this author or book, but I'm very curious now. Now that is also another thing, because everyone is going to be wondering like, oi, what is going on? I see this book being talked about everywhere. So it's definitely bringing awareness to it. Liz is saying, this opens up a valuable and in-depth conversation. not just about this book, but about the topic of obscenity and what does and does not meet the criteria of the Miller test. My wheels are spinning. Fran, listen, Liz, when I read that before hopping on here, because the thing too for me was I'm like, okay, author Tori Woods has been arrested, is now out on bail, will be going to her local court next week. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
For me, and this is just me personally, and maybe I'm the problem, who knows, but I was happy with the book being removed and it not being platformed, meaning it was removed from Amazon, it was removed from Goodreads, it has been scrubbed from the internet, and so on. But then we saw it escalating, people calling her work, people posting her public information, her private information publicly, who's her employer, making the calls and all the things, to the point where obviously now she has been arrested. We will learn more. Obviously, when this goes to court, I'm sure local news reporters will be on top of this and reporting. We will learn more about what law, if any, they will be applying to this. But as it stands right now, she's facing 3 charges as it relates to CAM material. So from creating to distributing to all the things, let me actually find it so I'm saying the right things on here. Again, this is available on news.com.au. So yeah, it's CAM, possessing CAM material, disseminating CAM material, and producing. So yeah, so from possessing to producing to disseminating, because it also noted that they seized, after having a search warrant, several copies. Listen, man, I don't want anyone coming in my house and seizing my books. I'm just saying. But it definitely, it makes us have to think and question what is next. Even though it's fictional, we in America, we have a criteria, the Miller test. Again, let us romance readers and just readers in general get familiar with this, because who knows what might happen. We might be hearing about this in future. Liz also went on to say, that's it right there. It's all subjective. A lot of things are subjective, but it's just like our judges, right? We have laws and each judge has judicial, what's the term? Discretion.
Mhm.
They decide. You can recommend, okay, someone should get 6 months in jail, but the law says 2. And the judge is like, even though the DA told me 6 months, I'm going to give you the whole 2. Or I'm going to give you what, you know what I'm saying?
They also have like leeway to interpret the law. So it's like, okay, this is how I read what's there, because it's kind of ambiguous. And this Miller test, I didn't read the criteria, because but as soon as you said this is the case law and this is what's going on, my mind immediately went to somebody will interpret it however they see fit, and somebody will take in their subjective mind, they'll just interpret, okay, this is the material I'm reading, it applies.
Yeah, which is why it's important.
Always.
Yeah, but this is why it's important we need to vote, okay? It doesn't matter where you are in the world right now watching this. If you're in the United States, it doesn't matter what state you are in, because remember, we are bound to state law. We are a federalist society. So, state law affects you just as much, in my opinion, more. Again, this is my opinion. I think what my state does affects me more than on the federal level, like my day-to-day. Let me be clear, my day-to-day. But yes, it's up for interpretation. So this is why we need to pay attention to the judges we elect, okay? Both on a local level, a state level, and then a federal level. This is why the Supreme Court is always a big thing. Just bringing it back to the DOJ and their standard, as you mentioned, Francesca, the 3-pronged test, again, links in the video's description so you can read more, because they do have a citizen's guide as to what is the test, and also just how you can know whether or not, if this is considered obscene and what the federal law is on it. The first one is whether the average person applying contemporary adult community standards finds that the matter taken as a whole appeals to prurient interest. Example, abnormal, unhealthy, degrading, shameful, or morbid interest in nudity, sex, or excretion. That's what it said. So whether it's taken as a whole, if it appeals to prurient interest based on adult community standards, whether this is the second test, whether the average person applying contemporary adult community standards finds that the material depicts or describes conduct, sexual conduct, in a patently offensive way. And it gives an example whether these ultimate acts, normal or perverted, actual or stimulated, and all these functions and things that I'm not going to read here on YouTube. And then the last test, whether a reasonable person finds that the matter taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. That last one right there. Whether a reasonable person finds that the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Any material that satisfies this three-pronged test may be found obscene. And federal law prohibits the possession with intent to sell or distribute obscenity, to send, ship, or receive obscenity, to import obscenity, and to transport obscenity across state borders for purposes of distribution. Although the law does not criminalize the private possession of obscene matter, the act of receiving such matter could violate the statutes prohibiting the use of the U.S. mails, common carriers, and all the things. USC section 1460, another one, 1461, 1462, and 1463. It's a whole thing, everyone. It's a whole thing.
That's way open to interpretation. Ooh, that could be anything. Anything could be considered obscene as per that criteria with the right. Like I remember I heard one time a lawyer say that how you interpret the law, you can make it say absolutely anything you want. Period. So, and that is so open to interpretation. So open to interpretation that is concerning.
It is concerning. It is concerning. But again, here we are. And I think the state of where we are in the US, I can only speak for the US. I know the author is Australian. That's a whole separate thing. But for where we are in the US, because I can't help but think about where we are, we're in a current state where everything is under scrutiny for being banned, right? Even books that I believe have literary merit. Okay. Beloved by Toni Morrison. Does it have some problematic things in there? Yeah. But it has literary merit. She's not romanticizing or saying this is, whatever. It's not. Okay. Twilight being banned in certain spaces. Akatar banned in certain spaces. John Green. There's so many books. And in my mind, I'm like, this has literary merit. What are you talking about? But they're protecting children. So they're banning it from schools. Then it moves from schools to public libraries. So now adults can't access it. Then it moves, if you live in a certain state, which we also covered on a live in a channel, is that there are laws now there are states that are not funding Overdrive, which provides Libby services and ebooks and all these things. So I'm just saying, don't be surprised if something wild comes out of this. Any final thoughts, Laura?
No, this is concerning. So God bless 2025. Just keeps on winning.
Fran?
No, I mean, I'm just going to go cry into my cereal or something.
Listen, my wheels are spinning. Again, if you're just joining us live, you're going to have to hit the replay. We were reporting on the fact that author Tori Woods has been arrested and is now out on bail. This has been reported by Australian news media. I cited the Daily Telegraph, which is the Australian Daily Telegraph, news.com.au. You can find links to these articles in the video's description. We go on to say the fact she's a Sydney author. She was arrested based on all the global outrage over her book entitled DLT. We also know she has been let go from her job, her day job. We also know police went to a residence and arrested the woman who is to author Tori Woods, legal name Tessolin Mastrosa. That's her last name, Miss Tessolin Mastrosa. The police also executed a search warrant seizing several hard copies of the novel to be forensically examined. She has been charged. There are 3 charges listed. She's due back in court on Monday, March 31st. It also goes on to share the apology statements and just everything. And it also included the statements made by the folks who were working on her team with this book. We covered this in a previous video. So if you're hearing about this for the first time, highly recommend checking that out, where we presented everything as it relates to her. And again, if you're just joining us, just hit the replay button. If you are watching the replay crew, we'd love to hear from you as well. So share your thoughts in the comments. I'm just going to end by saying this is concerning about what the future will be for books in this genre, because it is very subjective, but also now we are aware, especially for US readers, that there are laws in place to essentially ban it on the grounds of obscenity. Again, links to the US Department of Justice website is in the video's description. Also to previous cases where there were a prosecution of a web host who had a whole bunch of stories on their website as well. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next live. Bye.
Bye.